The tax situation doesn't seem very fair, having the older people pay for everything.
In most communities, it isn't all older people.
Recording in progress.
How come? All right. Good evening. This is the Chicago Computer Society Linux Special Interest Group for October 2024. Tonight we have a different kind of a meeting than what we normally have. It's basically because of coming up of the end of the year. We got to discuss some things and make some decisions. I wish there were a few more people here. And some other things that I've got as topics. I will have a handout, but I'm not going to review any of it. You'll have to read it all yourself. Please pardon me. I'm going to bring up, hold on a minute here. I wish you'd get out of my lap. Some of my cats, boy, I'm telling you.
Have them pay dues.
Yeah, I wish I could. Except that I'd be paying for it. Okay. Now, you can see my calendar. So you don't have to bring your own up. November 26th is the normal Linux meeting date in November. Unless I'm mistaken, the 28th is Thanksgiving. And a fair number of people, Bob Dexter being one, is going to be doing some traveling probably. So he may not be able to make the 26th. There may be others. It used to be, I went out of town too, but I would have the meeting from my relative's place. So the question becomes, the 19th is the south side, the 21st is the northwest side, the 12th is TNT, and let's see.
7th is west side.
Yeah, 7th is west side. We got another dead body. Hang on a minute there.
So what you're saying is the 14th is open.
Well, the 14th is open, or December the 3rd, which is 2 days before the West Side meeting on the 5th.
I could do any of those.
That doesn't help me one bit. I could say, the heck with it. Come on, I thought I acknowledged him. Dang it. I swear I clicked on him.
Yeah.
To admit.
That would be Earl. That would be Earl checking in.
Okay, Earl, I hope you can hear us. Right now, we just started the meeting a few minutes ago. We're discussing November's Linux SIG, which normally would be on the 26th of November, and Thanksgiving's on the 28th. The 19th, 21st, and 12th and 7th are other meeting dates. So we either have to, there are a lot of people that will go out of town for the Thanksgiving. So we'd either have to hold the Linux SIG meeting the 14th of November or December 3rd. So you guys give me some idea. I want to hear from each and every one of you as to what date you think we ought to try and do. Do we stay with the 26th? Do we use the 14th, or do we use December 3rd?
I favor December 3rd.
That's one
I
vote.
would second that.
We got two for the 3rd.
I can do the 3rd because we get done before I gotta go and drive Margaret someplace for 6 o'clock local time.
December 3rd.
Okay. How about you, Bob Baxter?
I can do most of the meeting on the 3rd. I have a conflict later in the day,
Okay.
but we're used to that.
Then we'll change November's meeting to December the 3rd.
And that means we'll have 2 meetings in December unless we skip the normal December meeting due to the holidays.
Well, the normal meetings would be West Side, TNT, and the South Side.
Right.
Oh, our
no,
normal December meeting is on the 24th, which is
hang loose,
Christmas
for
Eve.
folks.
Yeah, it would be Christmas Eve.
Right.
In
And I
December.
ain't doing it on Christmas Eve, period.
So let's let December 3rd handle both November and December.
Well, actually, now here's the thing. We already know Ed Keating will not have his meeting on the 19th, and you have December 31st, which is still in December.
But that's New Year's Eve.
That's New Year's Eve. So
I understand
What
it's
we're-
New Year's Eve, but that varies on people and that, especially who are older versus those who are younger that really
That
want
means
to party.
that if once we have sunset here, the skies are going to be lit by fireworks
So,
right.
here
But-
for sure.
well,
But your sunset is after the end of our meeting.
I
It's gonna-
understand that. I'm just saying, giving.
but in either case, we've got the possibility of a
Let's
fourth
move it up to
meeting.
the 19th.
Okay, we got one for the 19th.
December 19th.
Yes.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, that'll work.
All right.
And that's in place of Northwest.
Yes.
Sounds good.
So basically, we're gonna. This is kind of stuff we did last year, by the way, and maybe the year before that. But
Yeah.
Ed Keating never does one in December. That's a given. And I know last year I did a December Lennox one. I don't remember what I did for November, but I think it was the last day of November last year was on a Tuesday. And I don't care what the calendar says.
Yeah.
So,
So we'll have a quote November and an actual December meeting.
yeah. So we'll end up with 5 meetings, 2 of them Lennox.
Yeah, but it's a long month.
Yeah. All right.
Eh.
So that'll that takes care of a major thing that had to be discussed at this meeting. And I'm not kidding that it needed
Yeah.
to be done. Next question. And it's a legitimate one. I just want to know who has upgraded to Linux Mint 22.
Planning it soon, not done yet.
Nobody
Okay, I
else?
have not found the link
Well,
in my.
in last month's handout, there's a download page. If you follow it, it gives you everything needed. But you didn't look. I'm serious when I say that. Now, when it comes to this machine here, this is my current production machine. I tried to upgrade to 22. Right near the end, it got a flat tire, and I went off the road. However, in the past, I think 1 or 2 ways of upgrading, you went to system reports and it would say, hey, there's an upgrade available. Click on this and start the backup. I mean, the upgrade. Now, in this one here, you actually have to download that procedure from that article in September's handout. You download it and then start executing it. It wants to do a time shift backup, and this is the first time they've enforced that. It sounds like a great idea, and there's only one problem. It defaulted, because this is the way time shift works, to your root directory. So it took up almost every bit of free space in my root directory, and I think that's why I crashed and burned. And
So,
I knew by checking my system afterwards that it removed almost everything in the root directory. If you hit restart or shutdown and try and bring it back up, you got no OS, period.
mhm.
So now you're stuck with some possibilities. You either had an independent system backup and you restore that before you ever did this upgrade. Number two, you could use your install media flash drive, like this one that I've got, ordinary flash drive that I had 21.3 on, and I then go to time shift, point it towards the internal hard disk. It sees the restore point, and I said restore, so it did. But when I got done, I thought I had a botched restore situation. I think I've got it all okay. Where the problem is, because there's no real space in root, I can't do an update. I don't care if there's 10 million updates ready to go right now. I can't do any of them. I can't even do them one at a time, because you can't get through the update process in the installer to know what is available currently, to know what you need to update to your system, and then proceed from there. Even if you did them, unchecked everything and checked them one at a time, you still wouldn't have enough space to download and install most of them if you got that far. And
Okay,
number
so
three,
go ahead.
if you wanted to, you could take that same install media, go through a reinstall of the root directory as another third option. But I started playing with Linux using a UEFI partition. It does work for me, and it gives you a little bit extra security, but at the same time too, it is not necessary. Even for that 22 update, it's not necessary to have UEFI. If it recognizes it the first time you reboot, it gives you a message. All you got to do is hit enter and continue on. It boots up like normal. Everything is normal after that.
So, take home lessons. 1, have the old install media ready. 2, have a live Linux ready, which is your old install media. 3, know how to boot into the USB. 4, set up time shift ahead of time, making sure it's going to an external drive and have that drive connected when you're going to do this.
Well, I'll modify that just a tad. If you have, like I do, a great deal of empty space in the home directory, I could point it there. But it's not a good idea, because if something horrible happens to that internal drive, you're SOL.
Yeah, if during this upgrade your entire drive loses its partitioning scheme, you are SOL.
That's right. And so you got to have a systems image of the drive. Also, system images do compression. Time shift does not. Time shift does copying. Okay.
And I would also like to add, if you use Clonezilla or RescueZilla, that is not truly an image in that it's not portable to a newly formatted partition or a different partition. It
Right.
is a clone.
Right.
But in this case, that's exactly what you want.
That's correct. Even when I'm saying a full image, such as using a Macrum Reflect Rescue Disk, that's fine. It's still doing a compressed one, but the idea is that the whole thing has to be restored, not part of it. But Macrum Reflect can copy the content of individual partitions if you want to. There may be other software that can do basically the same thing. Now,
If you have a copy of your Linux, then you can copy a partition back using any of a number of different kinds of software.
well,
But I would not recommend that.
I'm bringing this up because of not only what happened to me on 22, somebody else was upgrading a Linux. Not upgrading, excuse me. They were playing with time shift and didn't realize, hey, I'm going to stick this in root. And I had to bail them out. So time shift, if you bring it up, I'm going to bring up time shift. And for some stupid reason, you got to log in with root.
That's because of what timeshift can do.
Big deal.
It can back up. In fact, it does back up root directories, and those have root permissions.
Picky, picky, picky.
Linux is very picky, and that's
If
one of
you
its
think-
strengths.
If you think that's a headache, you got to wait for the rest of the meeting.
No,
Uh,
that is one of Linux's strengths.
no,
That
I'm
it
saying,
won't let you do root stuff without logging in as root.
like I said, you'll have to wait for the rest of this.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's
Now-
worse.
Two things you have to do. Now, I absolutely state you got to have an external drive, as Bob brought up. Now, here's the problem. If I stuck in a drive right now, it was probably used under Windows. Even if it was formatted FAT32, you can't use it. You have to take and at minimum do a create to set up a Linux partition so that Linux will recognize this as a place where it can put Linux things like timeshift. Now, the other thing that you have to do is go into the settings or through the wizard, go to location, the second tab, and say, where is it going to put it? This here is the default. And look what it says. There ain't enough space. I got to have at least 1,000 megabytes or 1 gigabyte of space. Trust me, 1 gig will not handle it. In gigabytes, it's 13 gigabytes. In raw bytes, it's over 19. So even if I delete this right now, the snapshot it did, which I'm going to eventually do, I'm doing experimenting while I got it. Here's the home directory, and I have 180 gigabytes free, but it would be a bad location. If something happens to that drive, you're SOL, period. Now, in one of the August and September handout articles, the person talks about time shift, And he only recommends creating snapshots, nothing else, and only keeping the two, the most recent one and the one prior. Now, based upon my experiment already, A, you must have at least a 64 gigabyte or larger drive, because right now there ain't enough space on 32 gigabytes to be able to put a second one. And even if it did, the second one would have to be deleted. Well, let's put it this way. The oldest snapshot would have to be deleted before you could do your next step snapshot. Now, if you got 64, you should be able to hold two. You got to remember, all software, I don't care what it is, going back to 75 is constantly getting bigger, 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 and bigger. So snapshots will get bigger, bigger, and bigger because they're copies non-compressed. And so the next thing to consider is doing an external drive like this one. That is a normal 32 gigabyte drive. Through my experimentation, I copied from my local hard drive image and put it up on the flash drive. Trust me, I guarantee you, not one of you ever want to do this because it took more than 12 hours. So if you were doing the update, it would have taken 12 hours to get the time shift restore backup of what was in the root directory mostly, but it also covers your home directory too. And then you would be able to proceed upgrading to Mint 22. So
At this point, I would like to point out how long it takes me to do a Clonezilla backup of over 100 gigabytes of Linux. About 10, 15 minutes,
well,
just by way of contrast.
it depends upon what you're using. So the next one that I've got to do is this one here. This is external housing, much like what I have actually plugged in at the moment. This is an external M.2 SATA drive housing, and I have one hooked up as SATA. Okay, now SATA ain't the fastest thing in the world. I have two other ones like it that are for NVMe media. Now it depends upon your computer if you're using the NVMe version as to how fast it can transfer the media depending on the port you're plugging into, such as are you still using a 3.0/3.1 Gen 1 port, or are you using a 3.2 Gen 2, which is 10 gigabits. Then there's also Thunderbolt 3, Thunderbolt 4, and if you got the newest kind of hardware, you've got USB 4, and these are all either 20 gigabytes or better in speed. So if I haven't tested this yet, I was going to, but I stopped myself and for tonight's meeting. So this is going to be the one that I want to play with. So what I'm going to do is for location, say this drive up here, if I can, but I can't do it right now. I wonder why. Gee, probably because I didn't do create yet, because there's no Linux partition out there. So I'm going to back out of that to do a create. and see if I can get not enough space. I hope that's true. It better be. Otherwise, I'm in deep doo. So I'm going to try and do that one. Select device does not have a Linux partition. Absolutely true. So I'm going to do next. Well, I have done this before, but I undid what I did, and now I'm having trouble. I think the reason I have trouble right now is I forgot to change this beforehand to something like FAT32 or XFAT, and that's why it's not going. This thing is, I'll bet you, I still have it in NTFS format, so I'm not going to mess with it right now. But that's what you'd have to do is create it so I can select it and then let it go ahead so that this is the new location for time shift on this machine. This also means this drive is probably dedicated to just this machine. But I think since I'm going to practice doing 2 snapshots and be able to do a 3rd one before I delete the oldest one, I'll probably divide this drive in half and make it so that it can support 2 machines. And I'm going to only do a running 2 snapshot backup of the snapshots, and that's it. For real backups, CloneZilla, RescueZilla, Macro Reflect Rescue Media, probably easy to do. Rescue Media, there may be a few others. We'll all do a total image backup, probably with verification, which is what you really want to have anyhow. Macro Reflect does that. I'm not sure if Time Shift does it, but so far, so good. But if it doesn't do a verification of everything that it backs up, to me, that's a flaw in design, because anything can happen that might cause a problem in that copy image and make it unusable if you ever have to restore it. At least with verification, you got a good shot of having no problems whatsoever. So that's one of the major things I wanted to make certain I covered tonight. And it's an interesting little segue that we haven't gotten into. And it's also a case where we haven't gotten heavily into time shift. And really, because of the article that I did give you guys in the handouts prior 2 months, we only need a snapshot, 2 of them. The most current one I create and the prior one. And after I create a 3rd one, I can get rid of the oldest one and still only have 2 snapshots. And I don't have to worry next time I need a snapshot, it's going to go through. It's going to have enough space by getting rid of what is getting too old, because snapshots have a limited lifespan. Usually you're going to find out if you need to restore that much sooner because things suddenly are not working right in your system, and because something went wrong in your update or upgrade. And that's what happened to me. And so the snapshot came in handy. Now, I could have done the other 2 ways I mentioned earlier, which is I had an image backup. I could have restored the whole image backup and been back to the same spot. Or I could take and just rebuild the root. But to rebuild the root, since I have UEFI partition, you have to rebuild that as well, and ignore the home directory and swap file, or swap partition rather. So bottom line, it's something you got to learn by practice. Somebody I know had more than one machine, and instead of doing only one machine until he was certain everything was hunky dory, and then doing the other machine, he did them both, and now he's got a problem. And so I'm not sure exactly when and where, but I'll probably end up having to try and help dig that person out of that problem. So I've got multiple machines. I got multiple Linux mints, including the LMDE, but it's a hassle to try and do multiple updates. I don't mind doing it with Windows. I have more experience with Windows. But with Linux machines, I learned a long time ago, it's best to do one and make sure you know what you're going to experience. This one fooled me by having a time shift backup and didn't know that it was backing up to the root directory. So that's why I'm bringing this up. And so that's another lesson I learned, and it's a good lesson to learn. Now, several distributions of Linux do come with time shift pre-installed. Other ones, you may have to install them yourself because they don't come natively with that version. So if somebody wants who doesn't have Linux Mint or Ubuntu, they can install Timeshift out of the software manager or whatever it's called in that distro, and load in Timeshift, and know now to start it up manually. You got to have your media plugged in. It's got to be either FAT32, or I think it'll also handle EXFAT formatting. And then you would do a create to create a Linux partition, and then you would change also the location to use that drive, so that you're always going to be creating your snapshots on that drive. If the drive's not plugged in and you try and do a snapshot, hopefully the darn thing will be smart enough to say, hey, wait a minute, you don't have the drive plugged in, or something to that effect. So you would have to get that drive out, plug it in, and then probably continue on from there, or restart Timeshift. Any questions so far on this issue?
I just want to note that I looked in several discussions, and they are very cagey about not telling whether or not Timeshift actually verifies. They always seg into some other backup strategy.
Well,
rsync does verify as it backs up.
well, yeah, but see, now the thing is, in a matter of speaking, what they are doing is the same thing Windows has been doing for years. They create a snapshot of your system called a restore point.
That's
But
basically what it looks like Timeshift is doing.
that's correct, or at least in the snapshot mode. There are other modes to time shift that you can also do, including automatic scheduling. But this gets back to, do you want to have your backup of, and you can call this a limited backup because it's not complete, always connected to your computer, and the possibility of a disaster occurring, which could also include malware, and have that also lost. So my recommendation is make your snapshot, and if it will let you, remove it. Then and you you do that by coming up here to your file explorer equivalent in our Linux distro that we have. I have two here. One's called TimeShift. That's that USB 3 drive I experimented with. And I have this new device, which is not properly formatted, and that's why I'm having an issue trying to change location. So I will probably be calling this new volume TimeShift. After I do, you click on this icon here, and that ejects that drive. It's now history. So if I do the same thing here, that one's history. I just have to unplug it, plug it back in, and it'll be there. I can then format it, make a partition if I want to, etc. Or I can let TimeShift do the create of the partition. If I format this drive FAT32 or EXFAT. Once I'm done with that and it's saying I've got a partition, I've got the location as this external drive, I'm in business. And I can, yeah, I know. The thing is going to complain to me. It complained as soon as I boot the darn thing up. But that's the way it is because there isn't enough space to do an update. And I'm not even sure it can create all the temp files it normally would create. It probably can create a few, but not very many. So that's covers a couple things so far that I wanted to talk to you about tonight. TimeShift and upgrading 22. I think the reason I got hosed was because it did run out of space. It needs to download from GitHub a copy of a program. I don't know where they got the name. CRUD-INI. And it is a multi INI file manipulator program that it requires to finish things off and get it properly configured. Otherwise, you lose everything. And then you got to have the restore point that it created at the beginning, or you got to have one of the other two options to get your system back up and going. Another side item I want to bring up because I probably thought of it before, but the timing was off. But right now, old style desktops, you know, the towers, you had, generally speaking, without getting into server, a workstation and server class machines, either two memory slots or you had four. And if you had four, either every other slot was one memory unit and the other pair was a second memory unit. When you have two, which also is all laptops have, though I've seen at least one laptop in my lifetime so far that only had one SODIMM slot. It had the equivalent of the second SODIMM as memory on the motherboard. So that can happen. Now, when you got two sticks, you can put in a mix match of speeds of the memory modules, but not of the memory type. There's DDR, or sometimes called DDR1, DDR2, DDR3, DDR4, and the current one is DDR5. And 5 is very fast. I have nothing that uses 5 right now. I got 4 all the way back to something before SD RAM drives, at any, including static memory modules. But anyway, aside from that, for example, let's say that I have a machine. It came with 8 gigs of memory on one module. And let's just use either something like a Nux, my minis that I have, the laptops. Most of them will have 2 sockets. You can put in that second empty slot another SODIMM memory card that can be larger or smaller than the one you already have in there. For example, if I had laying around a DDR4, I had that in my machine, 8 gigs. I'd have a DDR4, say a 2 gigabyte drive. I can stick that in, and now my machine has 10 gigabytes. I can stick in a 4 if I've got it, and it's 12 gigabytes. I can stick in a second 8 if I've got it, and it becomes 16. I can, in some machines, depending on limitations, you might be able to put a 16 in with that 8, get 24, or replace the 8 with another 16 and end up with 32. But not all machines allow you to go that high. Some machines that are newer than what I have will allow you to have 2 32s, but not all of them. Some of them will restrict you to 2 16s. And it has to do with at least the minis, like I have that I showed you in the past. They're 7 inches by 7 inches by inch and a quarter thick. Those units, if they're 35-watt processor, they have no vent holes on the top. They're solid. And they use a 65-watt power supply. For those, I can go to 32 gigabytes. In newer machines, I know they can go to 64 at least, maybe as high in the latest ones as much as 128 gigabytes. And when you get into DDR5, which a lot of those new ones would be, you got another little thing. It normally was normal increments of our memory modules in size. But in DDR5, you've got in between ones. You've got 24 gig modules and 48 gig modules. So I know some machines can actually take, that are, I think, version 12, and go as high as at least 96 gigabytes. But a 13 and a 14 might be able to go higher. That's something that constantly evolves. And so that's another issue. One thing I have to stipulate, though, when you start mixing in modules, even if they're both DDR4, even if they're the same size, you have the speed of the memory modules that you must take into account. Some machines say that they are fixed in, say, DDR4 to 2133 or 2400 or 2666. Those are the 3 that I've seen the most. I don't remember seeing in between 2133 2266. So it might exist, but I haven't seen that one. Then you stick in the second module. Well, let's just arbitrarily say that second module you happen to have laying around, you're not going out and buying it, is 3200. You can plug it in, you can run with it, because all your memory runs at the slowest module's speed, or the fixed amount of the machine. So if the machine was defaulted to a speed of 2133, and you stick in an 8 gig 2400 module, it'll still run at 2133, not 2400. And if I stuck in a second drive that's 3200, it will run also at 2133, not at 2400 or at 3200. So I thought I'd bring that little tidbit up, that it allows you to do a lot of flexibility in configuration size to overcome a used system that you might buy that, say, comes with 4 or 8 gigabytes of memory. Or you're lucky, maybe it comes with 16. But if it's the 35 watt that uses a 65 watt power supply, you can go up to 32. If it's a 65 watt processor, it will automatically have vents in the top of the 7x7 by 1 1/4 inch units. And that one is limited to 16 in the versions I have, but it may have doubled to 32 in newer systems. So you got to know what your speed limitations are. And if you're wanting to get memory that's faster than the base speed of the machine, you may have to get a full speed out of your memory. You may have to look at gamer type pieces of software that may allow you to overclock the system to that higher frequency of the memory modules. Sometimes that may work better than overclocking the CPU, and that's more dangerous. But both overclocking can increase the heat generated by the modules. That means it can shorten the life of the modules. But the two safest things for most people to buy in the used market are CPU and memory modules, because most people are not doing the overclocking.
Yeah. A friend of mine learned a memory lesson earlier today. He was trying to upgrade a PC from 4 gigs to 16, and he ordered 2 8 gigs memory cards. And it turned out that the computer required, it had 4 memory slots, and to get it to 16 gigs, it only supported putting in 4 gig memory cards.
But in some cases, you have to check, is the latest BIOS set up on that machine? Because one of the things they do frequently is set it at the BIOS for current memory modules, not for something that might never happen down the road in the future. That's where BIOS upgrades come in. And sometimes that kind of machine may be able to also have the upgrade in the BIOS, and it may then support 8 gig modules. You don't know until you check it out. And you got to
Yeah.
go to.
Oh, he returned the one, and he ordered a new one. So he's going the 4 gig method anyway.
Okay, well, I'm mentioning it because I've done this many times in the past.
I'll keep that in mind for future reference.
Yeah, I've done this many a times, and it's getting easier and easier to install BIOS updates without a disaster occurring of hosing your system. And most of the BIOS have an automatic backup, so that if the new upgrade does go south, you can restore the prior BIOS from that backup.
Yeah, my computer, if it gets a BIOS update, I know about it while I'm running Windows, and then the next time I reboot the computer, it installs the BIOS.
Well, that's I know why, and that's because you have a business class machine. Business class machines get updates automatically through Windows Update, because mine do too. And it just loads it in as though it's a driver, but it will, when you're going to the restart, it'll start the config of 1 to 30%, restart like normal. It'll, if it sees the firmware update, it does that next. Then it goes back into a restart, and it does the second phase of configuration from 31% to 100%, and you're done.
Both of my computers, the NUC and the Tower, have additional software that you either download or was supplied OEM, which takes care of 3 or 4 different methods for updating BIOS.
Yes, that's the normal way for consumer class machines, and it always has been. You either have the installer available automatically, or you got to download it, and then you got to follow their instructions. In some cases, you can do the update from within the running system from File Explorer, and in other cases, you have to transfer the BIOS update that's packed. You have to unpack it and move it onto a flash drive that's been created, that's bootable by the installer, and then boot your computer from that stick to do the update.
And there's also a method that happens from within the BIOS if you happen to be in the BIOS settings at the time.
Yeah, but that's a newer one, more than the older one.
These are CAP files, CIP.
It's something that's constantly evolving. Peter, I see your hands up.
Yeah. Let me lower the hand. So we were at the other one I come in on is the tips and tricks. And I showed you my small box that I was going to make into an all-in-one at that meeting. And I just recently deployed it over to the school, and it's working really great. So now I have a Linux 21.3 from the school that I am going to refresh totally. And I'm thinking on that one, just so I know what's going on, to download a clean version of 21.3 from Linux itself and start from the ISO itself.
Right.
Before I touch the one I'm currently on, because I don't want to do an upgrade of this one if I'm going to have a hiccup on the other one.
Okay, one piece of advice. I think 21.3, if I remember what I think I read, will go to sometime in 2027.
It says, let's see, it's 28, I think.
I thought it was 27, but it could be 28.
Oh, it's the 2023 that goes. 22 point. The new version.
21.3. It's supported, I think the 21 series in total is covered for 5 years. Okay, so it goes back to the first 21 version for, shall we say, the end of life, just like Windows does. Windows is constantly updating your 10 or 11. So what? The end of life goes back to the very first version.
Yeah.
So
but
I think
I'm gonna.
I think it it dies in 27, but you won't care because you'll probably be on 22 by the time the next school year ever comes around.
Yeah, so I'm gonna do the one that came out of the school, which is a 21.2, and blow it away because I've got all the files somewhere else, and install 22 from a USB bootable stick on that one.
Well, that's fine, but are you going to go to the 21.3 or 22?
I'm gonna go to 22.
Like I said, it's supposed to be forcing a time shift, and you better use it.
But if I don't, is that forcing a time shift? I'm not upgrading.
Oh,
I'm
yes, you
doing a
are.
clean install.
If you're going from any 21 version to a 22 version, that's an upgrade, not an update.
But if I boot from the USB that has the ISO on it and use that to install,
If you're going
which
to
will
do a
blow
clean
away the
install,
hard drive,
are you going to do a clean install?
yes,
Okay,
yes,
you didn't specify that.
I thought I did. Sorry.
That's a different story. If you're doing a clean install, I mean, most of the Windows 11, as an example, can be put on unsupported hardware, okay? But most of the ways of doing it absolutely require a clean install. There are very few instances that I've found where you can do an upgrade from, say, 23H2 to 24H2 if you had a copy. So that's why I'm bringing that up. And normally speaking, on even that one at school, you would be doing an upgrade. And it wants to do the time shift. If you don't do the time shift, you ain't doing the upgrade.
So that's so okay. So the reason I'm doing a clean one is I want to see what it's like.
Yeah,
One.
if you're doing a clean
Two
install,
is
if you're doing
I don't care about the files because I'm using a Windows 11 box at the school now.
if you're doing a clean install, it's not going to force you to do the time shift. The
Right.
time shift is an insurance policy in case something goes wrong with the upgrade, like it did for me. Period.
So then I have to decide after I get that one up and running what I want to do with the box I'm currently sitting on, which is an all-in-one, and is running 21.3.
Yeah, that's what I'm running right now. But see, I'm doing the upgrade. I'm not going to do a clean install. I've got too much stuff. Look at the bottom of the screen here. I'd have to take and install again a lot of software. I'd have to have a complete copy of all my home directory to restore, etc. That's a hassle.
I,
I want to do
I'm
an
aware
upgrade.
it's a big hassle. So, but
Eventually,
I don't have a lot on this
uh,
box that I'm working on.
eventually, when you're on 22 on even the school machine, it's going to come out with 22.1. That's an upgrade, not a clean install. That
Okay,
particular
so
application that you're doing there may be just fine to do it as a clean install all the time. That's not true with the majority of people using any kind of computer device with any operating system. They want to
okay,
do
so
upgrades.
the school is out of the picture totally right now because I'm currently on that little box that I showed
That's fine. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
with
I'm
Windows
just
11.
saying.
I'm at Windows 11 at the school because I wanted to be on the same operating system as the laptops the kids got.
There are more people on Linux than there are people who do clean installs on all operating systems.
Understood. Understood.
That's what I'm getting at. So you might as well get used to the idea of doing an upgrade to begin with. So you're all in one. I would back it up totally. You got Clonezilla, that's from the command line. RescueZilla, which has its own graphical user interface. You got Macrum Reflect You can download on a Windows machine, Macroom Reflect free, create a rescue drive, plug that rescue drive into a Linux box, boot up off of it, and then do a complete backup. And it's you can have it verified.
Okay, so
I'm just trying to keep your nuts out of the fire. I mean, chestnuts roasted on open fire are supposed to taste great, but not when it's personal.
yes, I agree there. And chestnuts are very hard to find here.
Well,
I'll ship you some,
yeah.
even though they're hard to find here too, because the trees are dying.
Okay, is there any further discussion in what we've covered so far?
There is a way to do the upgrade without time shift.
And how is that offhand if you're not using?
Hamburger menu in Mint Upgrade. Hamburger menu preferences, toggle off recent time shift snapshot, and
Okay,
it should not do that. There is a reference.
I didn't spot that one because it's brand new. It's a new feature that never existed.
Yeah. I don't know if this will disable the current. It'll do a snapshot during the upgrade, but it won't be checking for snapshots.
That could be, but whatever the case may be, I advise the snapshot and have an external drive to do it
Yeah.
on that's at least a M.2 SATA. It can be a 2.5-inch SATA drive or an
Yeah.
M.2 NVM drive. And at least I would say 128 gigabyte in size minimum. And at 128, I would dedicate that drive to that one specific machine. If you
Yeah.
got a 256, I'd probably divide it in half and be able to use it on two machines.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying don't do a backup. I'm saying do a backup in the proper way using your usual backup strategy.
Yes, absolutely.
And then toggle off this thing that's going to throw something onto your root directory.
Well, that's if you don't go into time shift, change its location to begin with, and which also requires the create, and which case you can still do the time shift on that external drive. A SATA and or an NVMe drive will go much faster than a regular flash drive. Drew, you weren't here. I did a Mint 22 upgrade. It bombed. It created initially a time shift. Didn't know that there was a way of shutting that off. And second, it used up all the space except for an itty bitty bit in the root directory to create the snapshot, which is just a file copy, not a compressed file. And then I did an experiment to move that off of the internal hard drive to a regular flash drive. It wouldn't work, so I did a copy instead, and leaving the one that's out on the hard drive. And I finally got it to go to the flash drive. It took around 12 hours. You don't want to.
I just bought my first SSD that is in the form factor of a flash drive,
Okay.
and it has no cable. It just plugs directly into
Right.
your
I've seen those.
USB port.
Right.
And I'm running Linux Mint Debian edition in a virtual machine, and the virtual machine is on that external flash drive, and it works really well.
Yes. I have external housing for an M.2 SATA drive here
Right.
already plugged into this production machine. I have two M.2 NVMe housings also. So my next thing that I'm going to experiment with is doing the snapshot onto the M.2 SATA drive and see what happens. Then
That'll probably be a lot better than the way you did it before.
I guarantee it. And then I'll probably try the NVMe. That one is based upon your machine and what PCIe version your system supports. 2, 3, 4, or 5.
Right.
And the
Mine,
higher
I
the number,
think,
the
is
faster
4.
it goes.
I think mine is a 4.
Well, most of my machines I think are 3, but I think I have 1 or 2 that are 2. I don't think I've got any that are 4, but if I do, it's only 1 or 2.
Yep.
So I'm just bringing up these issues.
Yeah.
In any event, Tim, thanks very much for that heads up. That could be a real showstopper for some of us.
Oh, this is turned into a nightmare. But instead of doing what a lot of people would do, dramatically panic and possibly create one hell of a mess, I figured out all the steps. I figured out how to move a copy to a flash drive. I could get rid of the one on the internal hard drive right now. And on top of it, I learned you don't want to use a regular flash drive. That's a nightmare. It's so slow. That's why
Yeah.
regular flash drives have been classified a long time ago the replacement for floppy disk and optical drives, because they're faster than those two media, but they're slower than a SATA drive plugged into a USB 3 port.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I've given up on using regular flash drives anymore for most things.
no, I heavily use regular flash drives quite a bit because I designate them. I keep them small size, as small as I can, but I do have some big flash drives. But I think the biggest is 256, and I don't use those very often. The most often one I use is 128, and I use that with Ventoy.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's how you use your stuff. And I've got lots of different machines. So in some cases, I'm using the same media on multiple machines. That's why I usually use 8 and 16s. 8s are almost impossible to get anymore. And 16s aren't far from being almost impossible to get.
Right. 32, 64, 128. And they're getting, even a terabyte is only $20.
Oh
You know,
yeah, they're getting cheap as hell. But at the same time, too, if I've got, say, a terabyte drive, and I have it 70% full of miscellaneous stuff, and I want to use it for a Linux distro that's going to wipe it out because I'm transferring it to the drive, that means I got to first back up all that 700 megabytes of
yeah.
media, whatever it is, and then do the flash, then put that media back on the remainder of the drive after a partition is created to put it in. That's a
Yep.
hassle.
Well, what I did recently was I created on a flash drive, or even actually I did it in Ventoy on a flash drive. I booted into Linux Mint, and then I plugged in an SSD drive into the computer. Let Linux Mint recognize it, and then I installed Mint onto the external drive, including the bootloader, so that I could then boot off of that from, instead of having a dual boot computer, I plugged that into my Windows computer, and then when I boot off the SSD, it goes into Linux.
Well, see, with me, my way of thinking, okay, number one, a small drive, 16 gigs, is all I would need for what you described, based upon what I thought I heard. And second of all, when you stuck in the SSD and it recognized it, you could have taken your entire Mint installation and copied all of it up there and had it bootable on another computer.
Right. What I have now is a 512 gig SSD that I can plug into any computer and boot into Linux
But
and
is
have
that,
a fully functional desktop.
yeah, but is that just the install version? That's the impression I've got.
It's installed.
Well, you might also have used Ventoy, just copied the ISO image to Ventoy, and then you could get the same effect plugging the Ventoy into any machine, booting up off of that, selecting Mint 22 ISO image, and you could have 21, 21.1, 21.2, 21.3, 22 on that same drive, and other distros like Ubuntu, Robocopy, whatever, and booted them off that drive. You get the install media immediately, and you can install whatever version of Linux that is, and you can use non-Linux ISOs on that same Ventoy drive and install from those ISOs to a machine.
Right. And my machine that I installed it to was the portable drive. And that way I have a persistent computer rather than Ventoy booting up and having no persistence. It was instead of purchasing another laptop or computer to install Linux on, I just created an external Linux drive.
Yeah, but
So it's kind of it's a production, well, semi-production machine that doesn't boot up into into Ventoy.
no, I know what you're talking about. I have the same kind of thing. I also have it in Windows 11 too. So it's basically the same thing. But I took what I had installed on a machine and put it
Right,
as
and put it
bootable
on.
on that external drive. And I can
Right,
take it to any other machine and run it, unless it's now the version I've got is for an unsupported machine, so it'll work on just about anything. But if it was a supported version, it will only boot up on a supported system, not in a unsupported system.
oh, speaking of unsupported, Rufus just released in beta format a version of their software that lets you install 24H2 on an unsupported hardware.
Yeah, but 24H2 has been withdrawn by Microsoft, so you may have the buggy version if you use it.
No, no, I'm talking about if you can download from Microsoft now, if you get the newest media creation tool, you can download an ISO that has 24H2 in it so
Uh,
that
th-
you're doing a clean install of Windows with 24H2 embedded in the operating system.
well, offhand, they had withdrawn it because they had so many detrimental problems, and I can't believe they fixed them so fast that it's now available again.
Gentlemen, why are we talking about Windows in a Linux group?
Why not?
Yeah, yeah, we shouldn't be.
Why not? An OS is an OS is an OS.
Well, then you join a Windows SIG.
I have them all. So what else you want?
But
Anyway,
you can run Windows in a virtual machine on Linux, so it's valid to talk about it in some sense.
that's right. And you can run Linux on a Windows machine in a virtual machine environment. And I've mentioned that in the past. And I've
Yeah,
done.
I have a friend that just ordered a new machine from B-Link, and that comes with an installation of Windows. He's going to replace it with Linux Mint 22. But it comes with a license,
Right.
and so that you can have a valid Windows license inside your virtual machine.
Sure. And it makes good sense. Peter, you got your hand up again?
nothing, Mark, just a sec. Yes, I do. I'm gonna lower the hand. You guys are throwing around Ventoy back and forth. What is it and how you use it?
Very, very simply, Ventoy is a program that you install onto a flash drive, and then on that flash drive, you can put 3, 4, 5, 10, as many as you can fit, ISO files for different versions of Linux. And
Or
then
other
when you
software.
boot off of that flash drive, it gives you the choice of which one of them you want to use.
Ventoy is not discriminate on what that ISO image is. So if you put Windows on there, it's also bootable. And you can install from that. I recommend at minimum 64 gigabyte flash drive or bigger. I have a 128 myself.
Yeah. So Peter, if you are interested in downloading 3 or 4 different Linux distros and with the intent of just playing with them and learning, what they are, not necessarily installing them, you can just download the ISO. You don't have to burn that ISO onto a bootable and create a bootable ISO flash drive just for that one operating system.
Right.
You can download 4 or 5 and put them on one flash drive.
Right. And pick when you boot up off the Ventoy, you pick whatever ISO image it is you want to use. It'll bring it up in a live mode and then allow you to either just continue running it there to say learn a new OS or to install it on the machine you booted the Ventoy up on.
Mm.
And in addition,
Yeah.
you can put other kinds of utilities on there.
Yeah.
So that you don't have to keep swapping out
Yes.
flash drives for gparted or for
Yes.
boot repair or for a couple of others that I frequently use.
Yeah, there
That's why I
are
said
password recovery.
any
There
ISO.
are ISOs that specialize in password recovery.
Right.
I have the what is it on there? Someone mentioned it earlier. That Linux, it's a version of Linux that boots up that creates a backup of your
There are 2 of them. There's Clonezilla and there's RescueZilla.
Yeah, Clonezilla. I've used both of them. I find that the newest Clonezilla is to be better than the RescueZilla.
Yeah,
Well-
there are limitations in RescueZilla. At last I tried. Clonezilla comes in several flavors and it can be skinned to resemble different distributions of Linux.
So those are normal things, but I mean, that's why I was mentioning about other ISOs. Ventoy doesn't care what the ISO is. It could be
Yeah,
G-parted, it can be G-parted live ISO, it could be Clonezilla ISO, etc., etc., etc. It could be Windows, even though maybe your primary reason for creating it is to support various Linux distributions. It doesn't give a damn.
Right.
An ISO is an ISO. It's an international software organization standard.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
it.
aware of that. I'm aware of what an ISO is. So it actually installs on the
flash
drive and creates that as a bootable.
Right.
So that then you can you see the ISO in itself and run it.
Right.
Yes.
Here's what it does. In terms of what it does to the flash drive, it creates 2 partitions, a small boot partition and a big partition that will hold your ISOs. In practice, what you will see is the first time you run it, you may have to enter some security keys depending on how your system is configured. But once you've done that, it'll just come up with a boot menu, a select menu, just like you would with Grub. And you just select what you want to run. And then you may have a second menu to select which boot method you want to use for that ISO. Many of them have several choices. And then you go right into whatever program you're using.
Okay,
And
so
you don't have to and you don't have to swap out lots of different flash drives, which is especially important for Windows 11 users because secure boot, TPM keys, there's a limit to how many you can put in.
So do you need a separate Ventoy disk USB flash for Windows and for Linux, or is it the same?
No.
You may
build-
mix and
It
match.
doesn't care
Okay.
what the
Yeah.
ISO is.
I'm
Period.
asking if it cares.
No.
Yeah, you create one flash drive, and instead of creating a half a dozen flash drives.
Okay.
It doesn't
You
really care.
Yeah, you can mix and match.
Mix of Linux distros, utilities, and Windows ISO images. I do what I want to with it. It don't give a damn. It just does it.
Yeah. Let's say you're a technician and you want to boot into a Windows recovery CD or ISO. You can throw that on there too.
Right. So there's tons of things you can do with a Ventoy. Prior to Ventoy was a utility that I think is still around. It still works very much the same, and that is Yum or Yummy. I don't remember which it is.
Yeah, I think it's yummy.
Yeah, I think it's Yummy too. And
Yummy.
both versions allow you to create for each ISO a persistent storage area if you want to. I usually don't, but it's an option that's available. It originally was on Ventoy, and then Yummy copied it, more or less. All right, we're running a bit out of time, and there's another major topic I want to get to. Back when CCS did a survey of what people were looking for, and I did an informal one at the Linux group. Peter, you came up with wanting to create a server. Well, guess what? There are more variations of a NAS to a server than you have hair anywhere on your head.
That's why I asked it.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at, that's where we got to try and narrow some of this down. Now, as an example, I can make probably some simple NAS and or server. You can even use a laptop if you got one laying around that has enough resources to it. You got to think in terms that it's experimental because you're not going to have enough storage. And once you get a good feel of what you're doing there, now you can expand it. NASs are usually simple storage, though some can be enhanced with additional features. Servers usually have something like Ubuntu server. And I want to use that as an example because it's one of the most widely used. Servers have no desktop, okay? But you can, on a laptop, as an example, install a normal Linux Ubuntu with a desktop and then load in the server software also and have it like an all-in-one. But normally a server, you only have a monitor, keyboard, and a mouse if needed when you're first setting it up. And after that, you remove those items and run it headless by using SSH to remote into it, even if the machine you're using as a desktop with a browser to SSH into the server sitting right next to it, that's a remote access anyway. Or it could be clear around the other side of the earth. It doesn't care where the server is located. But those, usually you add lots of other services that do specialized functions, including containers. including things like multimedia storage and playing, such as Plex or Jellyfin. You also have other pieces of software like Proxmox, which can be loaded in as an OS, and it creates a database, and you can add features to that. But I found out also in my research, which is getting monstrous. I'm near 1,300 open tabs and 14 windows have all those near 1,300 tabs. There's another version of OS that sounds like it could be a sweet deal. There are people who have concerns about Ubuntu for a variety of reasons. They could go out of business tomorrow, or they might start charging money, and so on and so forth. In either case, sometimes the stuff that they do is a bit unstable on some pieces of hardware, just like Windows 24H2, 23H2, 22H2, etc. So you can get a big surprise that you don't expect with new versions. Now, the new one is called Casa OS, CASA dot, well, not dot, OS. It is derived from Debian, and it may be the server that is better of choice because there's far fewer updates to anything Debian versus Ubuntu. And at the same time, too, it's more rock solid stable because they won't release something to the Debian community until they've researched and tried to find every possible flaw before releasing it to the community. So that's a possible another alternative OS. Some people do try and take, in some instances, something like TrueNAS. TrueNAS has two versions. TrueNAS Core, which is what most people are going to use. But if you have an older, lower powered system, less storage, you might want to use TrueNAS. What the heck was it called? Starts with an S.
Scale.
Scale. And that's to start learning the environment, as far as I'm concerned, and play with it. Learn from it, not use it for production. When you think you've got your feet under you with the TrueNAS scale, you can then create a TrueNAS Core version, know how to properly set it up that would be used as a production NAS for sharing data with all your computers as a backup destination for all your machines. And at the same time, too, you can add, in many cases, other features to the TrueNAS installation. I wouldn't get too adventurous in the scale version, but with at least the core version, it might be practical to add them. So what I'm looking at is, how do we want to try and approach this idea? Are we looking for the NAS? Are we looking for a server? Are we looking for both? Are we looking for like a beginner's guide? Or are we looking for how to possibly set up a production one? And I want to bring up one other thing. A lot of, particularly the servers, but many NASs will use some or all RAID drives. RAID drives, whether they're mirrored or non-mirrored, it doesn't matter. It's mostly for being able to keep the machine up and running 24/7 per se than as a real backup, because a NAS or a server, you have to back them up just as you do back up your desktops and laptops and phones and tablets. Anything that's a computer has to be really backed up. So that means if I've got a drive kind of like, well, you can hardly see it, but this is a 2.5-inch drive housing. And let's say that I've got up to 4 terabyte on it or something along those lines. I can create a folder for lots of machines that I have and put, since I only do the grandfather, father, son methodology, I only need to be able to insert 4 backups, deleting the oldest one afterwards per machine, per folder. And that has to be done, ideologically speaking, to a NAS or a server. You must back it up as though it was a normal desktop, laptop machine. And if you're smart, you keep at least 3 versions. If you're smarter still, you may have multiple drives that you rotate your backups through. In which case, or you take and have, say, 3 versions of the same backup. That way, you have multiple ones. If any drive fails, you still got more backup there that can be used to be at least a starting point, even if it's lost some of the data that you're normally backing up.
Yeah, I misspoke about the name of Scale. There is a Scale version, but it is their new, more modern version of the operating system. So Scale is what you do want to use for production.
Well, it used to be, I think, just the opposite, somewhere back in the past. But
I just went to their website, and Scale is their new premier version.
okay, that's fine. Still, that means you would probably set up core then on an experimental machine till you feel comfortable, and only if you really need it, go up to the Scale version, which I'm sure you got to pay money for.
Scale comes in 2 versions. One is open source and one is paid.
Okay.
The difference is the open source version is supported only through their community forum, and the licensed version gives you technical support.
Okay. So it's kind of like a lot of Linux distributions like Red Hat.
Yes.
I should say Red Hat and Fedora. Fedora is the
Is
open source, and Red Hat is enterprise version, which is pay for with technical support.
I have Scale running on an old laptop here. It has only 8 gigs of memory in it. And what I did is I just plugged in 2 external SSDs. You need to have a minimum of 2 hard drives to install Scale.
Okay.
It requires the boot drive has to be only the boot drive. And then you install your apps and data on a second drive.
Okay. Yeah, I've come
What's the
across
actual search for that?
I've come across something like that as far as a project goes, but they weren't, I don't think, using Scale, but I could be wrong.
But what's nice about Scale is, and TrueNAS in general, is they provide on that platform over 100 pre-built application servers
Okay.
that are all in individual Docker containers. So once you install Scale, you can go into the GUI administration menu and then install a server, and it could be a synchronization server like SyncThing, or it could be a cloud drive or a Joplin or
Well, that's what I
any
was
one of
saying. some of the NASs do allow for that. Some of the NASs do not.
They give you 108 is what I last counted, servers. Let's say you wanted to install your own Plex media server. You just go in and select Plex and say install, and it does the install for you. You don't have to know anything about how to install Plex.
Okay. Yeah, I am aware of a lot of that. It's just, like I said, I know of NASs that don't support that kind of operation, whereas TrueNAS is one that does. There are some other ones, but to me, it sounds like TrueNAS is the better one on setting up a NAS, and it would
It
allow
also,
you.
if you have enough memory and storage, it also supports the creation of virtual machines.
Yes,
So you can install a Windows virtual machine on your NAS server.
right. That's true. And but you better have a lot of memory, a lot of CPUs. I guarantee you, because you're going to need it to spread out the load. So this is what I'm getting at. This is a big, big, big topic all by itself.
I
Yeah,
don't go small.
I'm
I
looking into
never go
buying.
small.
Pardon?
I'm looking into buying a mini.
Wait a minute.
I
I
have
got to have
never
one
gone small.
conversation at a time.
Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
Okay, I have never gone small.
Then
So,
you knew
so
Linux
what
right
I'm
off the bat,
thinking,
right? You
what?
you knew Linux right off the bat, right?
No, I didn't. But I knew it was
Well,
going to be a.
normally you start small with even the Linux because it's going to be a throwaway installation. When you get your feet under you, then you create your real production version.
Okay, okay. So I've never gone small with ideas
Well, your ultimate
or
idea
plans.
has to be the big, but you got to start out small because you don't want to start out big for one reason, the money. Now, on a NAS and on a server, you have to use high grade drives, which they usually don't tell you. RAID means random array of inexpensive drives. The problem is, if you use inexpensive drives, you better have hot swappable and you better have a lot of spares sitting around waiting to replace the inexpensive drives because they'll wear out very fast. Whereas a real NAS drive, brand new, you're talking usually over 400 unless you can find a sale to get it less. And that's for a drive that's, I think, around 8 gigabytes. And bigger drives cost more, smaller drives cost less. So the thing is, that's another feature of a NAS or a server. How much, what are you going to put on the machine? How much space
I am
are you
not
going
for
to need?
sure right now. What I need to do is, and it's possible that the last CCS meeting that I attended has a solution with that replacement for the OneDrive
Yes.
that we talked about.
And it's
That
one
might
of that's one of
what
many that I've got as possibilities. That's what I'm getting at. And for example, I could take one of my mini computers that's 7x7 by an inch and a quarter, get a version 12T version of the machine. I can install in that sucker uh, 96 gigabytes of memory RAM, and I can install 8 terabyte uh, two SSD M.2s NVMe. That ain't shabby for a simpler version, but it also is very damn expensive. If you got the money, go for it. everybody isn't a Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Buffett, etc., etc. So let's get
I'm not
realistic.
either.
Now you can create a simpler uh, beginners learning system to learn how to manage the whole thing, because that's the key. Just like Linux, you got to learn a new OS. Well, you got to learn how to manage a NAS or a server, what you're going to put on it. You could take terabyte spinning hard drives, low end stuff, and use them along with a TrueNAS or something very similar, a Ubuntu OS, Casa OS, Proxmox, which will work as an OS, etc., and build from there. If you're going to get into containers, which you should, then that's an add-on to all the versions, no matter what. Then you got to know what you're going to put in each one and how much space you're going to provide, depending on what it's doing. Am I just backing up backups from other machines? Am I putting in various data files from all my machines so I've got one focal point? Am I taking and storing lots of movies, possibly taking them from DVDs and Blu-rays and putting them on the drive and playing them back like a Plex server or a Joplin, etc. I mean, it's almost limitless, but you got to start somewhere and learn enough to get what you need as a sound foundation before you attempt a larger distribution. And you'll probably scrap what you did create. Use the equipment for something else. Then you move on to your bigger project, and eventually you might have to expand that project or add a second NAS or a second server type environment to add flexibility and expandability. But you can't start off unless you're extremely wealthy and you got nothing else to do in your life with the end it all, be it all product right off the bat and be happy. You'll probably go into the nut house if it doesn't kill you.
I may go to the nut house anyway. So
Well, you
why don't
you might have
we
a lot of
look at
company. But why do it the wrong way? Do it the right way. You build up, not start at the top and work your way down.
Understood. So I pulled up on my other machine, TrueNAS,
I've got
and it says no.
I've got
Just let me finish. Let me finish the chain of thought. I pulled up the page, and it's a dual core 64-bit, 8 gig RAM, 16 recommended, 16 gig SSD boot, and 2 identical drives. The network port is basic. I think I can find that.
okay. That's
So
fine.
why don't we think about doing something along that line for this question,
Okay.
and looking at it together as a group.
Okay.
Okay?
That sounds more plausible than your big idea right off the bat.
Well, I'm always willing to go down from a big idea. Just that I start with big ideas.
Yeah. You can't start with a big idea if you don't know a roadmap how to get to that big idea and what it's going to take, and that includes money besides hardware.
Engineering, you come up with the big idea, and then you start to break it down for all the needs. So I take Elon as an example. he wants to get to Mars. So he's doing his rockets in stages. Listen up before you open up. Okay. He's got the boring company because he knows on Mars he's going to have to build it below ground.
Right.
And his biggest rocket can carry the borer. He's in electric cars because he can't use gas cars on Mars or any of the other planets because there's no oxygen to burn. So he's building up an infrastructure so that he can actually put everything on Mars so he can use it.
Yeah, but
And it's taking him a long time and a lot of money.
the things that are going on right now, we might send Elon Musk to Mars whether he's ready or not.
It'll be on one of his rockets, though.
At any rate, I got one other topic area, and it's in your bailiwick that I know of, Peter, but there may be others. What interest is there in MCUs, micro processing units? Like Adreno happens to be one, ESP32 is another one, STM32 is another one. Pico by Raspberry Pi, Pico W, Pico 2, which is fairly new and they're different, and Pico 2W. The Pico 2 and 2W use a CPU that's 4 cores, but different. All the other ones either you come in 1 core or 2 core units. Most of the time, unless you do some programming, they cores work independently on a dual core. If you add in programming, you can do multitasking between the 2 cores, like we do on our current systems. But the Pico 2 from Raspberry Pi, it has 2 ARM cores, which all the microcomputers have ARM processors, and it also has 2 RISC-V processors, but you can only use one or the other pair in any given situation. You cannot use them simultaneously. And the performance of the original Adrenos, which were 8-bit computers, was 16 megahertz clock. ESP32s and all the others, you're talking probably around 133 megahertz to 150 megahertz clocks. So you have that situation. What do you use microcontrollers for? I originally didn't think that much of them. But because I stumbled onto something while doing other research like I normally do, I found that there's a lot of things you can do with the microcomputers and maybe a little bit of support hardware. It's mind-blowing at the moment. They've even come out with a new Raspberry Pi camera, number 3, that has much better prospects than version 1 or 2. And I have a version 1 camera. It has more capability. I think the 3 can at least go to 1080p, might go to 4K, but I'm not positive of that. I don't remember offhand. So that I'm trying to find out what interest is there, because what do you use to do this? Well, Adreno has a good IDE. There are a few others like Platform IO and some other ones, including IDE Studio. But with the Adreno one, seems to be the most popular one, and you can add support for not only the Adreno, which is using in some of its models ESP32, and in some other modules it's using RP2040 processors from Raspberry Pi to give you 32-bit versions. I don't know if they do both single or just dual core models in that. That part I
So-
haven't figured out yet. But
Okay,
this is,
so with all of these, you got to worry about one is our Arduino started off with in Italy, and it was created by a teacher of the arts so that the art students could create visual arts easily, and that's why the IDE is so simple.
right.
It's using a version of C++ is the IDE, and you got to worry about what in the Windows world we'd call drivers for all the various functions.
You not only have to have that, but
You also need the source code for the interface to run them
right. But
on the IDE.
see, with me, I have C and C++ in my background, but with those languages, they are compiled languages. Therefore, you have to compile error-free your code before you can even test it on your target MCU. Once
Okay.
you got that, then you got to figure out where your problems are at, go back to your source code, make changes, compile it again, test it again, and you keep going back and forth. The alternative is MicroPython. MicroPython is interpretive, and you can test modules as you go along.
Okay, so the Arduino IDE has got functions in it that you can check the code.
That's
So
right.
it's an interpreter.
Yeah.
It's an interpreter.
That's right.
The IDE is an interpreter software.
But still, it's a difference between true compiled to binary, whereas MicroPython does what's called bytecode. In other words, they take each line of code and reduce it down to 1 or 2 bytes. That's it, and they interpret those bytes. The bad part is security privacy. If you're putting in your code code to URLs with a username and with a password, it's in plain readable text. And therefore, somebody can get that information and use it nefariously. With binary code, they can't do that.
It doesn't matter because the whole purpose of those, all of them, is to create a systems for somebody to play with. None of them are hardened enough to actually go into the real world industrial thing and be safe.
But see, that's the thing. I have a nephew. He is into this. He prefers the ESP32 over what Adreno was. That's what I'm getting at. And he is in a real world situation usage. But there are also 3 programs I've found out that if you develop whatever your application is completed in MicroPython, it will help you convert them into C or C++ code so that you have less work to do. And it being interpretive on the MicroPython makes it easier to figure things out, test things out, even without a completed program. And once you got it to the point where you have a final version, then you can convert it to a C or C++ and convert it into binary code for, say, a real production situation. That's what I'm learning so far.
So the IDE, and it doesn't matter what the processor is because you select the processor in the IDE.
That's right. Including Pico, Pico RP2040. They don't have the new 2350, which is the one with 4 cores. You can only use 2 at a time. But that's coming, I'm sure. And then there's
there's nobody that's had to write the
And there's also
Driver.
ESP32 support, which probably also supports the STM32.
Yeah. So the thing is that the microprocessors, not microcomputers, they're microprocessors, they only use the binary code. So the Arduino IDE actually does it and converts it over to the binary code that particular model, that particular model of processor board uses.
If it's in C or C++, but
You write it in C++, it converts it.
I know what it does. It's just a case where
take the code off of the IDE.
I'm
You
an
cannot take the
experienced
code.
I'm an experienced programmer analyst. I know what compilers are. I never used an interpreter other than for basic language. And the MicroPython environment is much easier to get a complex thing set up, including, say, a web interface that you can control off your smartphone, that microcomputer. And so you got to think in terms like that with these things. And there's a lot more to them than you would really believe. It's astonishing some of the things people have already figured out how to do with a microcontroller that used to take a lot of discrete circuitry and logic circuits and transistors and so on and so forth to achieve.
Agreed. I've got about four to 5 years of Arduino under my belt.
And I've got a nephew that's probably got you beat by a couple of years, but not much.
That's okay.
Well, I mean, right now.
But when I'm showing the kids, because we're doing that at the
Right.
after-school program.
Right, I understand.
It's easier to use the Arduino version 2, which looks more like an older C++ program like Visual Basic, because now they're actually color coding the things, and it's got way more functions on it.
Yeah.
Because you can go online to various YouTube sites and you can actually look at the project you're thinking of in small sections, and you can download the code. And if you're dealing with 6th and 7th graders, you don't want to go through debugging code when they're typing it in by themselves.
Right. I mean, even in my examples of the MicroPython, they do basically the same thing. It's just that you're able to test things sooner because it transfers the bytecode that the MicroPython creates to the MUC device, where you preloaded a MicroPython interpreter. It's very small and it fits in the RAM or into the EEPROM, I'm not sure which. And then when you pass in the code from Arduino IDE, Platform IO, etc., it will interpret that Python code. And then when you got the project completed, you can convert it to C or C++ and get the whole job very secure. If you've got secure type privacy information within that application, because it's connecting to the web or has to have remote access, and you have to have a username and password, such as accessing the MCU via SSH, like you would a NAS or a server. And I've got hundreds of these damn things, and you ain't gonna go through them in 5 minutes. You're lucky to get any meaningful one that's less than 10 to 15 minutes, and most of them go way beyond that into a lot of details. But I found quite a bit of information on these two topic areas that we last have been discussing.
Yeah, there's tons on the microcontrollers is what they really are.
Yeah, and I never knew there was, that many possibilities that I'm finding more and more of. As I find one, I find 1 to 4 more.
Yeah, and then almost every year, two or three more pop up.
Well, I'm sure of that.
So the ESP32 is only, I think, 3 years old now.
Is it 3 or 4?
Well, I'll go with 4 if you think that.
I think it might be 4.
Okay, so it's the one faster than the Arduino Uno.
Right. And like I said, there are models of Adreno I've discovered that are using ESP32 chips without as much functionality as a real ESP32 module. And also they use the Raspberry Pi on some that uses the RP2040. Again, less functionality than what you can get on the Raspberry Pi real unit.
So I ran into this problem back at Sears where I needed to pick up the hardware for the microcontrollers based on how much horsepower I needed for the test.
That is very likely, especially if you've got a drive motors, relays, something that requires more than about 5 watts of power.
So I also needed to make sure that it was, one, the entire system was UL certified or CSA certified, safe for an industrial environment,
Right.
and it was robust enough to handle some surges so that it wouldn't fall apart in 2 days.
Oh, big deal.
No, if Sears was still up, I'd have probably 3 systems that are still working at Sears, but Sears isn't up. So I used the Windows 95 machine, and I did not reboot it for 3 years, and I had 0 blue screens.
Well, I'm amazed because usually after 7 to 10 days, all Windows systems get fuzzy, and
This one was rock solid, and it was on a 486 with a coprocessor.
Oh, I had a 486 system, and it did rings around everything else I had at the time.
But once we commissioned the system, we never changed any hardware on that PC. Okay, so I eventually decided, and since I was doing the design and the implementation, to go with National Instruments.
Okay. Well, I would
because
like.
one is they had the hardware, they had the software. The software was a visual-based wiring type software.
Okay.
And it was easy for me to pick up on, and for some of the other people to read, and it was fully visual with all the meters and all the bells and whistles. And the hardware was rock solid, and it even had real-time sections, as well as straight USB joint connectors to put the D to A, the A to D converters that were on USB directly into them for the channels.
Okay.
And it would do 16-bit temperature.
We're starting to run late, so I want to.
I know that.
Yeah, I'm gonna get going
I want
myself.
to hear from people other than you. Is anybody else interested in the micro controllers?
I don't know anything about it really, other than what I heard here tonight.
Well, I just stumbled across it. I knew of microcontrollers a long time ago, but I wasn't interested for what I saw way back years and years ago, because Adreno goes back to 2003. And for what I've been reading, there's quite a bit of things you can make robotics out of it. You can, say, for example, control your garage door, whether your garage is attached or separate. You can use Wi-Fi 2.4, or it has its own communications capability. I forget what it's called, but basically you make a controller into a server, and then the other units talk to it. You can have
So-
cameras, you can do motors, servos, power relays, power high voltage and power consuming devices if you got the right interface. But it's a intelligent, programmable computer, but not like what we are accustomed to using. If you're used to Windows, even Linux, Mac OS, you're not going to do those in microcontrollers. They're not made for that. Microcontrollers are devices for either sensing stuff through sensors in, say, an industrial complex, such as oil refining, as an example. And then other ones might control valves that open and close by remote control, just through the microcontrollers. You may have security systems with lots of cameras that feed in through 2.4 gigahertz. So there's,
So-
like I said, it's snowballed on me. A lot of times as I'm doing research, I stumble across lots of regular read type articles or videos, and I spot one that sounds very interesting, or I had been looking for deliberately but hadn't found, and now I found one. And then with that one, I find 1 to 4 more, and then I find more, and then I find more, and it just keeps snowballing exponentially. And that's why I've got right now nearly 1,300 tabs open in over 14 windows on
So,
this
Tim?
machine.
Tim, what I would suggest is that you query the other groups and see if you have enough information, enough,
Well, I did one other group, uh, tips and tricks. I didn't, and I take that back. I also asked Ed Keating about it. He's done some stuff, but way back, and I don't think he's interested right now in newer stuff.
so it would be I don't think, you must have did it before I caught up with tips and tricks the other day.
Don't know. All I know is I thought
So,
I find it
I,
quite interesting segue, and I'm always doing research and experimenting, and this is a one avenue I may eventually go down. I'm not sure when, because I've got too much on my plate right now in other things.
it would be a subject matter for a whole new group
Yeah, well,
because of how much there is involved in it.
you might eventually create such a group, but it can start in other existing groups as a presentation topic, and you might get a couple presentations all together, and after that, then you would have to decide, should we break that out into a separate group? That's how I created Linux.
Yeah.
Tim,
Yep.
I've watched this channel on Linux and called Explaining Computers. This man out of Britain,
Yep.
Christopher Barnett, he's done a number of those kind of shows.
He
And
isn't the only one. I got some that,
I find them very interesting.
yes,
And I
and
think he uses the MicroPython too.
that's right. And but I know some other ones that are way more advanced than him. because
Well,
they're electronics engineers.
yeah, well, but I get the impression, okay, you've got your weather thing, you got your camera thing, you got your little robot tank riding around. But then what? You know,
Well,
I
you
don't,
it's a case where you're with computers. It's a versatile tool, and it requires really constant learning of new things
yeah,
because
well,
nobody's going to stick around with the same thing we had in 1990.
no, yeah.
So you got to keep that in mind. You're constantly evolving. The Adreno started off in 2003. I knew it sometime well after that, but it never caught my imagination. Now I see, because of my nephew into ESP32s, and then I stumbled across, shall we say, the right thing as I was doing research. I ended up getting very, very interested in the microcontrollers. When I'll, if and when I'll do anything, I don't know. It's in a certain sense, I have a Raspberry Pi Pico, or is it a Pico W? I don't remember which it is, but I had something in mind, and I haven't gotten to it yet. So I may get to this, I may not. I'm just curious what other people might have interest in, and this is one area that has struck a chord with me, but I don't know when I would do anything with it. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Very
Right,
good.
right now,
I
the
got,
NAS and server uh, project would have priority.
I gotta go.
Yep. Your Raspberry Pi, if it has the W, that's for the wireless.
Yeah, I know. The Pico had no wireless. The Pico W has not only the wireless, it has a temperature sensor on it as well. The Pico 2, which I don't have, that's uses the RP2350 processor that's got two 150 megahertz cores, and it has two RISC-V that run much slower, but RISC-V is considered an iOS uh, style of implementation. So you may find, especially in some businesses, uh, a lot of their controllers use RISC-V hardware for that reason. It's standardized, and therefore a Pico 2 or Pico 2W would give you, with or without Wi-Fi, and the ability to run RISC-V software on
Yeah.
and be
I was
compliant.
thinking about getting a Raspberry Pi 5 kit from Amazon. They have a nice kit for $130. It includes a case and a power cord and
Yeah.
memory
Well,
and everything.
you better hold off a little bit. First off, there's a lot of people that'll tell you, forget Raspberry Pi 5, go to either Nux's, and there's some smaller ones than one or two models smaller than a regular Nux, which is about 5 by 5, no more than 6 by 6, and the minis that are 7 by 7 by inch and a quarter. But on Raspberry 5, I've got some of that research information. And right now, the kits don't always give you everything that you want and need. And so you have to be careful. And when you're playing with them, you're talking a 5 volt, 5 watt power supply, or in other words, about a 1 amp power supply USB-C, which is also the same for Pi 4. There are 4 and 8-bit models of both 4 and 5. I have the 4s in the 4. I didn't want to pay ransom for the 8 in 4. And in the 5s, I've been able to see some prices below 100, but you're not getting a full kit. You're getting a basically the single board computer and a housing and maybe the power supply, and that's all. Now there are tops with Raspberry Pis. They have what's called tops that you can put on. There are even AI modules you can get for the Raspberries. Some of those are something that can probably be also put on other PCs to give you AI NPU capabilities versus going out and getting one of the new computers that costs $1,000 or more that has an NPU processor built into the CPU chip. So there's a, man, I'm not kidding when I say that I still have tons of stuff I have farmed, and I haven't even been able to go through the material one time. So it's an interesting subject. I can't believe the ideas that people have come up with that are out there. It's just astounding.
So the other consideration you have to do is if you're going to do things like lighting or relays, the outputs, the analog out or the digital outs have a fixed amount of current that they can put out.
Right.
So on the color corrected LED strips, you can only do about 12 LED, normal 12 LED, the 20 milliamp bulbs with the triples in them, with the circuits, and run them without having to actually bring in external power just to the strip.
Well, that's partly true and partly not true. Look up Philips light bulbs for Dubai. They are exclusive to Dubai. They are LED bulbs that are like nothing anybody else can get, and they cannot get them unless they go to Dubai to get the item and bring it back if they're allowed to.
So I'm talking about controlling them
I know what
with
you're
an
talking about.
Arduino or a Pi or whatever.
But it depends upon the individual diodes as to how much power they use. That's where you get into the limitation.
So if you go over like 0.2 amps on a circuit,
Right.
the analog circuits, you need to supply external power the
Yes.
same way if you go to doing motors.
But that's
you gotta,
where I'm learning the use of FET transistors, particularly PFET transistors. That's where you can trigger with the low capability of the microcontroller to handle something that's bigger.
yeah, and they've got boards and everything else that you
Yeah.
can run in that run on the digital bus that the
And
Arduino puts out or whatever.
And in Drew, when it comes to Raspberry Pis, there's also Command Module 3 and Command Module 4, which is the current one. I don't think they've come out with a Command Module version 5 yet. And for those, you have to have what I call a daughter board. You mount the command module to it to give it the I/O ports that you need for any application. You do not have real I/O ports on the command module itself. So that's another expanded area. Like I said, all this stuff in just those two topics are major topics. Whether we ever get to microcomputers, I don't know. We have a better chance with the NASA's and servers at the moment than the microcontrollers, but I'm just amazed at what I'm coming across. You can even get for Raspberry Pis M.2 NVMe daughter boards to attach to it and have up to maybe 2 terabyte. I'm not sure if they have capable of going to 4 terabyte, but you cannot use, I don't believe, the AI module and this M.2 NVMe module because they both use the same single connection on the Raspberry Pi computer. There is another adapter I just saw that, and I'm not sure if it runs with the command modules and the daughter board, where you can expand the connections that both of those type of modules use.
If you look at the bookcase in back of me, one whole section of that bookcase is just my support for the Arduino class.
I don't doubt that one bit.
And I've got a whole big bin, a 4 foot bin at the school already.
Yeah, it's just amazing how that one section has mushroomed way beyond what I knew about. And like I said, originally, years and years and years ago, at least I'd say 10 years ago or better, I knew about the microcontrollers, and I kind of yawned and thought, never going to happen, at least for me. Now I'm just the opposite because of having the Raspberry Pico or Pico W, plus also some of the things that I've discovered just since the last meeting of Linux. And it's ridiculous. So I'll eventually, probably sometime next year, I'll probably end up trying to start some projects of my own that playing with it. And again, I start off with the simple stuff that they're showing as I learn. And then as I learn, I can start doing other things that expand my normal knowledge of what I had learned at that point. Because I should have enough information by then to start. The thing that I would need additional help with is support circuitry or what support daughter boards are available for the various devices. But it's an interesting subject.
And before we go, I just threw into the chat an interesting link. Ventoy, I just learned tonight, supports persistence for a set limited number of Linux distros. So you can go up to there and read their instructions.
Yes,
And
Ventoy's had that for more than a year, but also they occasionally expand what distros, but also Yummy didn't have it. They adopted what Ventoy developed.
Right.
And the
so
persistence
I
gives
just
you,
figured that out tonight.
yeah, the persistence gives you read-write storage. So, you, for example, in an ISO image, if you bring it up and it's got a Linux distro, say Mint as an example, you can set up Wi-Fi access for that machine. But as soon as you shut down that ISO, it forgets what you set up for the Wi-Fi. So the next time you run it, you got to set it up again. If you got persistent storage, then it will save that information, and the next time you bring that up, you'll have Wi-Fi. there's a lot of stuff here that a lot of it just I wouldn't have thought of 10 years ago that I would ever be doing. But right now, I'm really changing my mind that yes, I've been thinking about a NAS and server myself. I have some stuff right now, but at the same time too, I like I say, I just stumbled across the micro controller stuff. I knew of my what my nephew was telling me before. I looked into it a little bit deeper, and it just exponentially expanded outward, just like what I have done with a NAS and a server idea. So I've got a ton of information. And the thing is, some of the information that's out there, they don't give you in-depth information, how to set up, say, Proxmox. Some sites do, some sites just tell you about it, and here I set it up, but they don't tell you how to get from point A to point B. So you run into that situation. So one informs what you can do, and you have to find others that give you enough details that you can start experimenting and trying to create it. And that's the learning curve of trying to get that stuff up and running.
Tim, do you want me to send you YouTube links for the ones that I follow and use in the classroom for the kids?
Yeah,
Which I filtered them out so that one is their instructions are good, the actual examples actually work, and they have a link to the code, or they actually write the code in the program.
Okay, yeah, I'll take them. I've also got some I set aside I might send to you.
Okay.
But right now, my first choice is to try and get through all the ones that I've got right now. I'm putting them into at least 3 categories. I'm putting stuff for me that interests me and probably will not interest somebody else. I have another set that includes Adreno, Raspberry Pi, and a little bit of ESP32. Then I have a third section that is just for ESP32, which should work with STM32.
So to clarify for the rest, ESP32 is the one processor that's above the Arduino processor, and it has built boards already that support video and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth.
That's right. It has more I/O capability, even though Adreno adapted on some boards the same chip, our ESP32 chip, but you don't have all of those capabilities out of the Adreno version. And likewise, some Adrenos now support the RP2040, which is in the Raspberry Pi Pico and Pico W, and has less I/O capability than using the Pico itself.
A lot of the pre-built boards, because they want to keep the size of the physical size of the board down, don't use all the capabilities of the chips,
right?
And they don't. You got to choose your chips by what you want to
that's
put into what you want to get out of it.
That's just like do you use a regular Raspberry Pi, a command module, a Raspberry Pi? Do you use a Raspberry Pi Zero, or do you use a Raspberry Pi Pico? They all have different, shall we say, application type areas of what you can do with them versus the other ones. The smaller you go, overall, the less capability it has. But at the same time, too, certain models may use some of the same chips from other ones and give you less of the capability. So you might as well go, instead of an Adreno with an ESP32 chip, straight to an ESP32 chip and get all the functionality that you can out of it. But if you need more, then you got to get into the bigger boards. Adreno has bigger boards. They have the Mega, they have the Uno 4, etc., etc., and like Raspberry Pi. And there's lots of other makers that have these small board computers too.
Yeah.
But they don't all have as many daughter boards, and they may not have some of the smaller controller type modules. But that's just like your subject that you're saying there in the micro computers is the same as in NASs and servers. It is, you can go from literally a Raspberry Pi 3 or 4 and create a NAS. Quite literally. You can even make it a solid state NAS, but it's going to cost you a fair amount of money, maybe $100, $120, unless you think that's chump change, to make a Raspberry Pi 4 with 4 terabytes of solid state storage. What do you want to do? It's all over the place. Most servers, except for in commercial applications, especially in the home, you can go into very low end. Old machines, like I can use for 11 unsupported or any Linux distribution, I can use also as a NAS or server. And it, especially if it's got like an i3, i5, i7, it's going to have a lot of horsepower, a lot of capability, good response if you got enough memory and the storage is fast enough. So there's a lot that can be done, but we need to try and get this at an end. So is there any last minute questions, comments?
I have a question. I missed last month's meeting, and you mentioned that in the notes there was how to install Mint and a step-by-step thing. Is there anywhere where I might be able to find that link?
Well, how much you paying? I mean, I've already done it, so I must have the link, and I handed it out at last month's handout.
Right, I didn't have internet service last month, so I couldn't join the meeting.
Shame on you. You got to stop doing that.
Yeah.
And also stop taking a nap during the meetings.
Jeff?
Last month,
Go
the
to
video
YouTube.
didn't
Go to-
work out.
Go to
So
Chicago Computer
the
Club
What-
and look
Whatever
at the,
Tim, whatever,
the
go ahead.
Linux can go all the way back to the first 3 videos.
I have the handout. I have the handout in a file.
Yep.
It
I'll
contains
only
all the
charge you
links.
double.
anybody who attended, I gave the handout to, or at least the option to download. I still have today's to post, so I'm also start working on that.
The only thing we don't have is this month's handout, and it's
That's what I said.
just this meeting's handout. That's it.
Well, gents, I'm gonna say goodnight. I got a basketball game to watch.
Oh, I'll send you the handout.
Thank you.
Hang on right now. Where did I put that little jewel? I thought I had copied already.
But I would like to make a request that these Linux meetings stick to Linux.
Pardon?
I would like to put out a request that these Linux meetings stick to Linux.
Well, that's fine up to a point, but Linux is being used in everything. And that's why I say in a meeting like this or EDS or TNT, you might have 1, 2, 3 presentations. Then you have to make a decision to break it out into something separate or forget it, one of the two.
Yeah, but we don't need to spend an hour and a half on something that maybe half the people at most who are in the meeting are interested in.
Did you know about how many people were interested to start with?
I thought you asked, and there was crickets, except for Pete.
Well, I asked first
And
at
except for me.
TNT, then I asked at Keating's meeting, and I did ask here too.
And
But,
each time it was crickets.
well, that's fine. And I may not do any.
Except here where Pete did express interest.
Well, even still, I may not do any such presentation on that one topic. I could also not do any NAS or server type presentation on in this group or any of the other groups.
Yeah, then by my timing, about an hour and a quarter went by, which was an exchange mostly between you and Pete about what exactly he was interested in.
That may be true. And you could have either left the meeting and I would have sent you the handout anyhow.
No, I did other things in between,
That's fine, but
which is
I'm just
something I
saying
often
you
do
could
in
have done-
meetings.
Hang on a minute. No, I don't want that one. All right, I gotta stop my share and bring that back up so I can put into chat. Okay, there's the handout coming. Should be there.
Thank you.
Yep.
And that's just a list of articles. I didn't put a lot of time into it because I was tied up with the other stuff. And I only had a week to work on this stuff. And I didn't come across as many Linux things as I usually do, partly because I got stuck on the server, NAS stuff, and the microcontrollers.
Well, you decide how you spend your time,
Well,
like any other commodity.
well, I mean, it's a case where we all have different levels of interest. And the only way to find out is to reach the subject at some point in time and try and find out, is there an audience? There wasn't anything for Linux, but I finally found enough people I could make a Linux group, even though I was advised by the board to forget the idea.
Well, it depends on what you define as a good meeting size. If you define 5 or 6 people as being a good size, then we do have a good viable SIG.
Well, I mean, I would like more, of course, but at the same time, too, you got to take what you get. And people go on vacation. Some people get sick. They have other things with family that tie them up. I can't control any of that stuff.
Right.
We also had at least one, and eventually have a second religious holiday that's going to cause problems. So
Yeah, well, those also happen during December.
well, no, one occurred in October here.
I know
Jewish
about it. I know about it.
and the other one is Christmas. Yes.
Yep.
So we have those kind of issues. We also have 4th of July. Usually there's no West Side because of that.
Yep. There are different reasons why meetings don't happen
And boy,
and why they get rearranged as we just did tonight.
And if you saw the meeting attendance for the meetings so far this year, man, did we have low attendance through the summer months because people were traveling anywhere they could think of.
Yep.
Even if they had to sprout wings to do it.
Yep. People have been doing that.
So, okay. Uh, Generally speaking, I think I'm about tuckered out. Uh, we did go farther than I did expect. I expected to have ended this nearly 45 minutes ago. So I agree that it went out of control, but then you could also butt it in and said, can we cut it short kind of deal.
No, I didn't want to cut short what somebody else might have been interested in, just in case.
Nobody's
If there had
interested.
been a big outcry of everybody saying, please stop, that would have been different.
Well, we have a lot of other topics that need covering in our other meetings, including iPhone, iPads, Android phones, Android pads that are desired. There are some other topic issues, and we have one person that theoretically would be an expert at it, but he doesn't want to do it. And so the end result is we need people to cover word processors, whether it's just Microsoft's, whether it's online or on the desktop, LibreOffice, OpenOffice, WP, I think it is, and there's several others.
WPS.
Yeah,
WPS office.
WPS, that's it. So there's tons of things there. Plus, then you got to cover the spreadsheets, and to a lesser extent, maybe now and then a one on more of a beginners to no more than an intermediate creating presentations, and I'm lousy on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are times I could use a little advice
Yeah,
and training about presentations. I guess we all could.
but that's what all the user groups are about. Is it's education, especially if you're a 501c3. You're supposed to be about
Exactly.
education, and that's why I also because Pete brought up NAS and server, and then I stumbled across the microcomputers. That's why I brought them up as well to find out what's interest is there out there. Right now, the NAS and server might be just Peter and me.
Yeah,
It
that's
might
why
be.
I'm saying we have to consider what
Well, we got to
most of the
have
people at a particular meeting are interested in.
Well, you have to
And
have at least one or more intro type meetings of a topic and
yeah.
then let people decide are they interested or are they not interested.
Oh yeah, an intro presentation would be of great interest to a lot of us on both of those topics. Just maybe not an hour's worth, maybe 15, 20 to a half hour.
Well, I'll keep that in mind because I've already gone through quite a bit. I got a lot to go. And if
Well,
we
yeah,
just keep
you
going,
verbally went through a lot, but what we could use are the graphics and the details and the how-tos.
right.
And those do take a little while
Most
because this
of that, you'd probably have to have two or three. You'd have a simple like introduction one, and then
yeah.
expand on that a little bit in some of the code into some of the simple projects, and then a teaser as to some of the other things you can do uh, with this particular technology. I know
Yeah,
Earl.
wonderful.
I know Earl left early. He's had a problem, especially when he goes out to visit a son. I forget where he said the son is at, and he's only got Windows machines. And Earl is all Linux, and he doesn't want to screw up his son's machine to run Linux while he's out there, etc.
Mhm.
So he might be interested in building a NAS and leaving it at the son's site because he can remote in from his house, which is in the Chicagoland area.
Mm-hmm.
So there's lots of things. We haven't even touched in Linux doing connection to remote machines through SSH.
Yep. And if none of you are familiar with if you do remote stuff or want to do remote stuff, there's a company called Tailscale that makes a free version of their peer-to-peer VPN. It's like a meshnet internet connection. And TrueNAS is one company that it's built into the server. So that's how they provide remote access. So if you're not at home and you want to manage your NAS on your phone or computer, you can load the Tailscale peer-to-peer VPN software. And when you sign up for the free account, they give you your own fully qualified domain name. And all of your computers get a fully qualified domain name. And you can even create your own private certificate for your web server with that domain name so that when you log in, you get a secure connection to the server.
See, and just bringing up some topics, you got more information than you had if we cut off 5 minutes ago.
There's always more that we can find out. There's always more to learn, especially from someone like Drew with so much experience. And you, Tim.
Well, I mean, I use remote, but I don't do that one there. I didn't know about it until Drew brought it up in a different meeting. And the most of the remote I do now is with any oh boy,
AnyDesk.
yeah, AnyDesk. And I used to use TeamViewer, Windows Quick Start, or whatever the heck.
If you want an open source program, there is an app called where do I have it? It's called RustDesk, RustDesk. It's an open source product that works a lot like TeamViewer.
Yeah, I remember you brought that up at a meeting too, and I forgot about it.
Yeah. They consider themselves, in fact, they mention it right on their website that they are an alternative to TeamViewer. TeamViewer has begun to crack down on people using their free version, too much.
Yeah, well, I stopped using it when I started using AnyDesk.
RustDesk has an Android app that you can download from GitHub, so that you can even take control of your computer from your phone, or you can control your phone from your computer. And if you are helping somebody remotely, in addition to a chat window and a file transfer, they also support audio. So you can actually talk to the person that you're remoting into and controlling.
AnyDesk is supposed to have that too, the voice, but I haven't gotten into that yet. All right, let's call it a quit. How's that?
That was a night.
Well, I mean, we've occasionally had some nights like this before, or went about 3 hours.
I've been on Zoom since 6 o'clock because I live in a community that has board meetings, and I had a board meeting Zoom call. Then I had a Central Florida Computer Society Zoom call, and then this one.
Yeah, and you came in late, relatively speaking, for what we were discussing.
Yeah, because I was on the Florida call.
This one is a longer. It's been a while since we had one this long. Usually by 9:15 or so I'm done. But we just
it's 11 o'clock now for me.
Yep.
It's only 5 here.
Okay.
11 here.
I got
8
10.
o'clock here.
What?
It's 8 o'clock here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Same
but
for
Jeff, you
Bob
probably
Baxter,
want.
too. He's in
Jeff, you
Washington.
probably. Yeah, but Jeff, you probably want to go to dinner.
You got it.
Nah, you're too overweight now. All right, I'm gonna end this.